Hey folks, have you ever wondered how software leaders pushing the boundaries in today's environment are adopting emerging trends? At QCon San Francisco, November 18 to 22nd, you'll step inside the minds of engineers who will share how they implement innovations in real-world scenarios. Explore tracks like architectures you've always wondered about, engineering productivity, and generative AI in production and advancements, and learn from senior practicing software developers on how they're adopting emerging trends. Find out more about the conference at QConSF.com. We hope to see you there. Good day, folks. This is Shane Hastie for the InfoQ Engineering Culture Podcast. Today I'm sitting down with Maria Fernandez Guajardo. Did I get that right, Maria?
That's really good. Yes.
Welcome. Thanks for taking the time to talk to us today.
Well, thank you for having me, Shane. It's my pleasure.
My normal question to start with is, who's Maria?
Maria is a product executive, a product manager. I specialize in emerging technologies, software. I am currently a senior director of product management at Google. My current responsibility is Gmail, that product that some people might have heard about. But before working at Google, which I have been for a couple of years, before that I was at Meta, where I had different roles, some in the video and entertainment space, in the Facebook app. And before that, I worked in virtual reality. I started the virtual reality for business work in Meta. Before that, I worked in startups, in several of them, Series A, B, C type of size, always working in emerging technologies. And before that, I work in silicon and hardware. I'm an engineer by training. I have a bachelor in electrical engineering and started in silicon. Then I worked my way up the stack. So I started with silicon, then did hardware, firmware, software, the whole stack. And that first part of my career, I developed different roles. I started as an engineer, then I did project management. I moved into business development, marketing. And I think that when I landed in product management was really a revelation because it includes like all of the things that I liked, working on, executing and developing products, talking with customers and understanding what they need and the pain points and the business side. So product management really was a love story when I found that maybe 12, 30 years ago.
So what does good product management look like today?
Today, product management, we are living a little bit of a revolution, especially with AI. I think that a lot of the things that we were doing before are changing. The basics of how we develop products are very much the same. So let me tell you what stays the same and then what has changed a little bit for the function of product managers like me. I think that what has stayed the same. So a lot of the things like that I mentioned in my book that we launched last week is called Sales to Scale, and it's traditional mistakes that startups do when from launch, pivot, scale, and exit through all of the phases. And if you look at the launch phase, which is when you create your first product, a lot of the things that we mentioned in the book are still the same, no matter if like AI or no AI, like rapid change, it doesn't matter. The first one is that a lot of the times you are too focused on the short term and you are not having like a longer view of like where things are going. There's a tendency to not think about it because, especially in the AI world, because things are moving too fast. And it's like, oh my God, I cannot think, I don't know how the world is going to evolve like in a month. How can I think about in 6 months? But actually it's the opposite. I think that you have to train and you have to force yourself to think about the long term. You have to be an avid information seeker and anticipate where the market is going to go. Because a lot of the startups that even started like a year ago or 18 months ago, they're no longer providing value because the world is changing so fast. So you do have to have your lights on looking at a longer time frame to anticipate those changes. But a lot of the things that is slightly changing is that in order to create a good starting team or a good product, you need to really work with a product thinker, an engineering builder, and a storyteller or a designer, right? That it puts all of those things together. And those roles are absolutely necessary. But in the world of AI, they have to work even closer together. Actually, I was listening to your podcast, to the previous episode that I think was called The State of Engineering, right? And they mentioned that it was encouraged the software engineers think more like product managers. And I found that very interesting. And I think that is even more pronounced now in the age of AI. Engineers have to think more like product managers. Product managers have to think more like engineers. Designers have to think more like engineers and product managers. Like everything, it kind of has to work closer and closer together because technology has a lot of limitations and the expectations of the user are being very fluid. So all of those three functions have to be super in synchrony if you want to develop products that are valid. The other thing that is mentioned in the book, like you have to have the right minimum viable team when you start doing these things. In the book, we mentioned that if you want to create a startup, we encourage people to find entrepreneurial archetypes. And an archetype is a word to say, okay, what are your core strengths? Like, what are the things that are absolutely required for the job? It's not about your years of experience. It's not about your resume. It's about like, who are you? What are your core things, right? And people who have an entrepreneurial archetype are great for startups because they thrive in ambiguity, right? They are hardworking. They connect the dots. They have a lot of diverse experiences. They're very comfortable in those very, very ambiguous areas. They're comfortable changing lanes, being a little fearless. And that is highly encouraged for startups. But in a world that we are living that is changing so much, no matter if you are in a small company, medium company, big company, it doesn't matter. Those entrepreneurial archetypes are going to be more and more seek and value because you have to be extremely comfortable with ambiguity because things are changing so fast. So really finding that entrepreneurial archetype when you hire, no matter what function, either a product manager, a software developer, there will be, specific jobs that you have, like if you are working like in compliance, regulatory, or you are working in scaling. Of course, there's different archetypes that you are going to seek, people who are more detail oriented, who are more like in those type of archetypes. But in general, developing new products these days, really that entrepreneurial archetype is really, really, really important.
So let's dig into that team. In that startup world, what does that great team look like and feel like?
So we mentioned 3 key skills that you need to have. It doesn't mean that you have to have 3 people. One person can fill multiple roles, but we feel that there's 3 type skills or things that you have to have in that core team. The first one is that you need a product thinker. And that product thinker is the person who is going to really chase what is the problem that you are going to try to solve. Being really in contact with like the customers. How do we build? Well, building a solution comes even later. How do we really deeply understand the problem that we are trying to solve? Have a lot of empathy, ask all the questions. And then when you start building the solution, because you are a startup, you are a small team, that person also has to have some sense of the solution building, right? Like it has to be elegant. It has to be usable. It has to be friendly for people to use it. So that product thinker, it can be a product manager or someone with that background, but it can be also an engineer who has that thinking of like seeking that problem that needs to be solved and designing that solution from a user perspective. We see a couple of cases where that, falls flat is that sometimes you have people who are extremely technical and brilliant engineers who decide to do a startup, and then they end up building solutions that don't find any customer because it is innovative, it's great, all of the things, but it doesn't really solve a problem in a way that has found product market fit, right? That fits the problem that you want to solve at a price point or with an integration that is going to actually work for the customer. So that is one skill. The second one is that you need an engineering builder. And that's going to be your head of engineering, and that's going to be your first engineer. Like someone needs to understand how we build this. Some of the mistakes that we have seen in startups is that they try to outsource engineering. Like, a couple of guys, a couple of gals or whoever have an idea. They come from like a marketing background or even a product background. And it's like, okay, we have this idea. We're going to build it and we're going to outsource this and a team is going to build it for us. We believe that's a really bad idea because especially in the early stages, you really need to have a very close loop of working with your engineering team and iterating really, really fast. And as we were saying before, having that engineer also have a product mindset, a product thinking hat, extremely important because some of the decisions that they are going to make, you can anticipate where things are going and make that much faster. When you have a team outside and engineering is totally outsourced, those very valuable cycles are going to be much longer and the context is going to be lost in translation. So we really encourage to have that skill in the founding team, have an engineering building. And the last one is to have a storyteller. And a storyteller because It is startup, you need to live to see another day. And sometimes that means telling the story to customers so they get you like the next pilot, they get you the next contract. And sometimes it's telling the story to investors. So you get the next round of funding. And telling the story is about, okay, what is the right balance between where do we see the big picture, right, for this product, the big picture in how we are going to be a big business, how we're going to get, but also how do we get there and what is the immediate thing that you can do. And so people can understand and connect the dots. Because when you are a startup and you are small, your first product is going to be a minimal viable product, right? So you don't want people to think that's it. You want to tell that story, both for customers and for investors. So we think it's important to have those skills. Again, one person can have them all, or you can have multiple people who complement each other and bring those skills.
Why did you write the book?
Because I'm a forever learner and somebody proposed to me to write it. And I thought it would be a great learning experience for myself first. But then the reason why we wrote about this is because we are 3 co-authors that wrote this book, Mona, Heather, and myself. And the 3 of us have a lot of entrepreneurial experience, and we have been in technology for 25 plus years, each of us. And we were talking, like one of our, Heather, had just sold her company to ServiceNow, and we were talking about like some of the struggles that they had. They have to do a pivot and like the exit, and so we were talking a lot of the things, and we saw so many commonalities on like things and experiences that we have lived through, the many startups that we have gone through, and we thought that it would be interesting to write them down. Because entrepreneurship is a very lonely job. And we thought that there was a lot of books out there that talked about frameworks and a lot of big success stories. And those are 1 in a million. And we thought that there was missing that voice of the entrepreneur in the trenches, like with very practical like tips and like, okay, this is how you see that this is going south and this is what you can do about it. If you read the book, it's extremely practical. And, there's a lot of things that you can do. Like you go to the chapter and the phase that you are in, and there's a lot of things that you can take and implement right away. So we thought that it was a missing thing. And me personally, I love learning. So I learned how to write a book. And that's how Sail to Scale, it's now in Amazon.
So as we grow from that very first core team to getting a little bit bigger, looking at, now we are starting to tackle some of the, I don't want to say scaling issues, but yes, maybe we're in a heavily regulated environment. We've got to bring in some different skills there. And we might not need everyone to have that entrepreneurial spirit. How do we find the right people?
Oh, 100%. I think that, those entrepreneurial types are extremely important in the launch and pivot phase, because that's where things are really, really ambiguous and like you really need to move fast and connect the dots. As you go into the scale phase, of course, things changing, right? Like you are going to need people, for example, people who love to scale are great system thinkers, right? They see how everything connects and they're optimizers by nature. They see something, they want to make it better. They see something, they want to make it bigger. That's where you shift the archetype that you are hiring for. As you say, you want to get into you are in a regulated industry. Somebody is going to have to make sure that, we pass all the checks and we have all of the marks that we need. And there are people who love that. There are archetypes who just love that attention to detail and compliance. Those people will be great. So yes, definitely when you go to scale, you need to shift gears and start thinking about the different teams that you have to create and find different archetypes for different areas that you are going to grow, including yourself. Because, if you're the CEO and the leader, you were of a certain time at the very beginning, you need to adapt to the new phase of the company. And then, there are people who knows how to adapt and there are other people who have a hard time adapting. And same thing for like, if you are like, the head of product, for example, if you are a head of product that are like extremely entrepreneurial, extremely scrappy, and you just want to try, you need to be able, as the company grow with it and like scale and become that different type archetype. And if you are not willing to do that, or you can't do that, or you don't want to do that, maybe it's time for inviting someone else to take that job and you come back to do the things that you love. Because I think like the other thing is that, especially when you are in a startup, there is just not a lot of time to coach people, trainings, like really your core strength, that's what you get. We're not going to change a person. So if somebody is of that nature, it's going to be really hard in an environment like a startup where there's so much pressure and everything is moving so fast, to coach them to be something very, very different. So in a startup, like it's better that you hire for the phase that you are in.
So being conscious of where you're at. And that takes self-awareness to step back.
100%. It takes a lot of self-awareness. And that's what, like, sometimes you get too attached to a product and you say, you saw the inception and it's like, oh, I just want to take it to completion. Sometimes it's not in the best interest of yourself or the company, but it does take some self-awareness. And, we talked about it in the book, right? Like, sometimes it may be you and you may not be seen and you may be extending your welcome and you may be miserable because it's not the things that you love to do. So yes, it does take some self-awareness to maybe ask yourself, what is my archetype? What do I enjoy doing? And there's no shame in saying, you know what, this new phase, not for me. Somebody else who loves this type of work can take it and run with it. I'm just going to do more of what I love doing.
So that's in the context of a startup. What if I'm not in a startup? What if I'm an individual contributor working inside a larger organization and I've got a great idea that I think would be beneficial to the organization? How do I get my idea in front of the right people?
That's a great topic that a lot of people ask me because, we all have great ideas, especially people and individual contributors who are, face to face with the problems every day. They do come with great ideas. Sometimes organizations have the right forums for these ideas to come up and show up. They have hackathons. They have periods where people can do pitch and things like that. But sometimes they don't. So, what can somebody or an engineer who have a great idea, what are some of the things that you can do to get ready to do that? Well, first of all, one thing that I always say is that it's a lot of timing, because you may have a great idea, but it's not the right timing for the organization. So what I recommend is that you get ready, because you don't never know when that timing is going to come. It may come overnight. It's like, oh, we have this, we need this. And then you have something ready. You put it on the table. It's like, how about this idea? So you have to be ready and wait for the timing. Sometimes it's not in your own terms. It's in the terms of the company. So you have to be ready. But then there's some ingredients that will make you better prepare. For example, it is very important that if you have a new idea and you want to be that entrepreneur, right, in residence, that you want to bring something, it's very important that you show passion, because it's going to be tough. It's going to be hard. You are going to be swimming against the current, right? You're starting from something and the rest of the world hasn't caught up with you. So you need to have that resilience, and showing passion. It's going to give confidence to whoever needs to fund your project to say that person, it's going to stay on it. It's not going to give up in a couple of weeks and say, I want to do something else. This is too hard. So that's one thing. The other one is that you need to know the details. It's not enough to come back and say, hey, maybe we should, build a rocket to go to the moon. Yeah, how, when, why? You need to know your stuff. If you don't give confidence that you have done the research, that you know that is a real problem, that you can build a solution, you need to know those details. Otherwise, that idea is going to be who's this person with this idea? Yeah, ideas dime a dozen, right? You have done your homework. The next thing is that you need to build a reputation. You need to have small wins. If you don't have credibility in an organization that you are able to deliver, that you are able to build things, it's going to be real hard. If you come new to an organization or a new team and you say, hey, I have this idea, I want to build that. Who are you? Are we going to entrust you with this thing? We don't know. So you have to build little by little your credibility. It can be in that area or it can be in a different one, but you need to have a little bit of credibility to entrust you to build something new. You need persistence, because you're going to hear no a million times. So maybe it's not the right time. We're talking about timing, right? But are you going to keep going or are you going to give up? And then the other thing that really, in my experience really helps is asking for help. I think that when you go and you pitch an idea, it's this is my idea and I want to do this thing. People are like, okay, cool. But if you go with a different approach that is hey, I've been thinking about this. What do you think about this idea? How would you make it better? And people will tell you a bunch of reasons why it's not a good idea, but invite them into the conversation, make your idea better. Ask for their help in how to move that forward. And I think that when you ask people for help, they become invested with you and your idea. And maybe you can enlist them to be part of your support team and help you when the opportunity comes to move it forward. Anyway, those are some of the things that can help to push your idea forward.
Shifting focus a little bit, you said you wrote the book because you love learning. What did you learn in writing the book?
I learned that I liked it. Okay, so because of my past experience, we do have, both in Google and Meta, a culture of writing. So we do write a lot, technical and learnings and frameworks. We do write a lot. And also, literature was my favorite subject in high school. I totally dropped it for pragmatic reasons of going to engineering, but I'm an avid reader. I read about a book a week. I love reading. I journal. I've been journaling every day for the last 2 years. So like the dots connected. So I learned that I love it. And I learned that I like to put things on writing and share it with others. So, to help whoever can get a tip from that. The other thing I learned is that it's really hard to write a book with 3 people because it was 3 of us. It was really hard, both from a coordinating 3 people. We all have full-time jobs. So it's really timing was really hard. Coordinating 3 voices. So it sounds and it reads like one. It was really hard. And, through writing the book, I did learn a lot through, scaling an organization and through exits, because my co-authors are experts. We are all experts on different areas of the life cycle of a startup. And while working with Mona and Heather, I learned a lot about how to prepare for an exit of a company. I learned a lot about how to scale a company and sell it to somebody else. So it has been a bunch of learnings for me. It has been a great experience.
Maria, there's a lot of really good advice in the conversation we've had here. If people want to continue the conversation, first of all, where do they find the book? And then where do they find you?
You can find the book in Amazon. I, have hardcover, softcover, Kindle, all of the things that you want. It's called Sail to Scale. Steer your startup clear of mistakes from launch to exit. And you can find me on LinkedIn, of course. And reach out. I'm excited to talk more. Whoever wants to talk to me. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shane. It's a pleasure to talk to you.